Sounds great. Well, welcome everyone to 3 hours of Conditionality Bad. As your host, I have officially turned off and muted all of you. So thank you for spending your Saturday night with me. Oh, wait, this is not the 2009 Development Conference. I need to check my notes again. I did, in fact, lose that argument miserably in 2009, despite the fact that maybe that's the key theme that runs through the entire weekend. It's conditionality that has led to the predicament that we find ourselves in. But absent that, what we are actually going to do tonight is talk about fundraising, which hopefully will be a little bit more persuasive than my conditionality bad rants of when I was actually relevant for arguments in the debate community in 2009. We're going to start with a video. It's exactly 20 minutes. And we're doing this because our original goal was to have a senior vice president of advancement from Wake Forest University come and do this presentation, to actually do engagement with you all. And unfortunately, the life of a development officer means that Melissa wasn't able to make it. So she generously volunteered to do a quick recorded Zoom that we did earlier this week that you're going to watch. The context for this is that later this summer, Wake Forest is going to be announcing a $5 million endowment for debate, which we're very excited about. And that only happened because of Melissa. This is not on me. This is a complete and total 100% lucky situation. That is not because I had some brilliant strategy or anyone at Wake Forest had some brilliant strategy that went forward and created this endowment. Instead, Melissa brought a person to the debate program, and over 13 years we've worked together is what the final gift will end up being whenever it's actually complete. It'll be 13 years in the making. So the goal was to give you a little flavor of a conversation with a development officer who specializes in principal gifts. So Melissa Combs is a vice president here at Wake Forest University, and her expertise, her specialty is in major gifts. So the buildings on campus that are named, major programs, working with the board of trustees, working with the president, that's who Melissa is. So without further ado, I'll shut up and we'll watch the 20 minutes. After that, I'll have exactly 15 minutes. I'm going to set a timer for myself of the 10 lessons I've learned over the course of this process, then Q&A if people want to chat. Thank you, Kelly, for running the show. All right, I believe we're officially recording. Thank you, Melissa, for joining today. For all of you joining and watching this video, we are joined today by Melissa Combs, who works here in the development office at Wake Forest University. So Melissa, how about kicking it off by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this role and what your role officially is.
Okay, so I had a fantastic undergraduate experience at a small private liberal arts college on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, Washington College, little teeny tiny colonial, one of the 10 colonial colleges. And I started traveling around. I was involved as a student trustee, and I started traveling around with the president as on fundraising calls. I thought, wow, I really love this. So I went and worked for a professional organization. I worked at Dickinson College in Pennsylvania, and I've been at Wake Forest for, I can't believe it, about 25 years. And it's not a job, it's a calling. And so what I get to do at Wake Forest is I work on scholarships. I work on faculty support, like things that we've worked together on, Jarrod, and we'll get more into that. Capital building projects. And so what I do now is I work with very high net worth individuals to connect them with their greatest passions. I started doing the annual fund, which is give $100 or give $1,000 or give $25,000 to your alma mater. And especially at private schools, but not just at private schools, tuition doesn't pay the whole thing. So this is a big part of American philanthropy, that we help higher education. And the best part is to see the outcome. I mean, to meet some of your students, Jarrod, and the ones that have gotten scholarships and how hard they work to get those, or to see the funding we've been able to do for Wake Debate. Oh, excuse me, just a little thirsty. But anyway, it's fun. I've done it forever, and it's all I've ever wanted to do. And to see the joy that donors get out of investing in faculty and students is just terrific.
Well, that's outstanding. And I know that everyone who's watching right now and might watch this later are very excited to hear your expertise, both because of how long you've been doing it, but because of the types of people you work with are the kinds that everybody hopes to be able to have step in and save the day for their programs involved in forensics. So how about we dive right in with a question? What are the biggest misconceptions or maybe myths about fundraising that you would say would be important for a program leader to know right off the bat?
I'll use this word a lot, and Jarrod, you really illuminate that. This is a relationship business. So sometimes when I'm with someone or I meet someone and they're like, "Oh, this is a fundraiser. Watch your wallet," and it's like, no, it's not like that. We're in the relationship building business, and the phenomenal gift that Wake Debate received was because of a relationship that the university, through me, had developed. The relationship is not with me, it is with the university, but I'm the conduit to that, had developed with a couple who were very interested in debate. But it was the partnership with you as a faculty member. The most successful development officers forge really strong partnerships with faculty. And so some of the misconceptions are it's hard, the one thing to keep in mind is it is sometimes a long game. And I know that's hard when you're looking at funds for right now, but it is a relationship business and it's a long game.
Tell us a little bit about that long game. I think I've seen somewhere some statistics that say from an initial meeting until someone writes a check that's a six-figure check can be on average 14 to 16 months. Is that what resonates with your experience? Is it more than that?
It sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, but that makes a lot of sense because people give to things about which they're passionate, and the couple who gave to Wake Debate were passionate about debate, but they didn't, and they knew Wake Forest, but they didn't know anything about Wake Debate. So they came and you set up a mock debate, and they just fell in love with, we love debate, but we love what we're seeing at Wake Forest. And some of my colleagues would say to me, "Oh my gosh, that partnership with that professor is so fantastic. How did you do that?" Well, I just called you and asked you. But it does take time. One area that I wanted to touch on, and I know that there are all different kinds of programs we're talking about, but sometimes people are surprised at what a source of potential funding parents can be. If their child is having a good experience, to give to that particular program, whether it's debate or something else, but not to overlook that. And I think you had mentioned to me that not all of your program have alumni. So I think really it has to do with how involved the programs are in getting the word out. And I'm not talking some expensive ad campaign or any, we don't all have great PR operations, but a lot of it is just telling the story. And even something as simple as social media that's free. But really just people like stories, and tell the story of your program.
So let's start with some do's and don'ts when it comes to institutions. As I understand
Okay.
it, one of the big mistakes that people can sometimes think is that they'll do fundraising on their own, and they'll maybe think of that social media and they'll start soliciting for funds or something along those lines. How important is it that people start with the office on campus, whether it's called development, advancement, or what it is, and what are the do's and don'ts about approaching that office on campus?
Well, that brings up a really good point, because telling the story, getting the story out there is great. The challenge with trying to go it on your own is you all are the experts in forensics and we're the experts in raising money. So when we partner, it's going to be better for everybody. One thing to keep in mind, development officers are measured by how much money they raise. So if you have a program that is raising that where you want to have them help you raise money, that's good for them. So I would start, if you're not already, by reaching out to the development office and just saying, we have this program and can you partner with us? And I keep using that word partner because it's so, it's less that it's like, go do that for me, because it has to be a partnership or it doesn't work. And sometimes faculty have fantastic relationships with students. I mean, there's nothing like the faculty student relationship. And sometimes faculty say, well, I can just call that alum or something. You can, but it's better for everybody. And you'll end up doing more if you involve the experts in partnering with you. You have the relationship, but they can help you with some other parts of it. And also let you know that there are opportunities out there you may not have known about.
So when somebody approaches a development office, are they typically divided up based on regions of the country? Are they typically divided up based on assignments to particular areas? So if somebody's debate or forensic program is located in a college versus an honors college versus an academic department, where is the best place to sort of get the lay of the land for who they should go to first?
Well, as is with everything in life, Jared, it depends. So what I would do is if I were a faculty member or a debate director or someone directing a forensics program, I would first of all talk to my fellow faculty members and say, hey, do you have a good relationship with somebody? Because at Wake Forest, you would say, well, go to Melissa. And what I would do is I would say, well, if you're in the arts, my colleague Beth takes care of the arts. That's the way it is at Wake Forest. I would start with your fellow faculty members. They may say, I don't know, I never worked with the development officer, but that's a place to start. And then if you don't have a person, then really the if you can find the executive assistant to the vice president for development, that person knows everything and they can direct you in the right way. And don't, like, if you reach out to somebody, you don't hear back from them, just find somebody else. I mean, sometimes it's just because somebody doesn't know where to direct you, but if once you get in and find somebody, they'll tell you who wants to help you. And sometimes places are divided up geographically. It really, really just depends on where you are.
Well, let's assume we've pulled off your advice. We went through the administrative assistant. We have someone now. What should someone be prepared to do to be that good partner? What are some of the things that someone who starts working on an actual fundraising strategy to be a good partner, what should they be prepared to spend their time and resources doing with their time?
Well, the best thing you did was coffee. So a lot of it has to do with telling the story, and there's nothing more challenging for a development officer than when a faculty member says, I have this program, go raise money for me. Well, we need to know more about the program, and we need to know, the more we know, the better, the more effective we can be. And the more we know, we do our best to educate ourselves to everything that's going on in a college or a university, but sometimes there could be something we didn't know about. But if we're sitting down with a donor, you never know what story is going to come up. Or you could be sitting down with somebody, it could be a parent, it could be an alum. What was your favorite activity you participated in college? Well, I was at the business school, but my favorite thing was debate. Or I was a debater in high school, but I ended up getting a scholarship to college that didn't have a debate program. So but I love debate and it prepared me for college. So you just never know, both on our end of learning about what's happening in the program, but the more we're equipped, the more we can ask those questions and learn. Because it's not something somebody necessarily you're never going to know. You're not always going to know if that was an interest.
Should a good director of forensics prepare a one-pager, a two-pager, a longer briefing document? What should they be prepared to hand to their development colleagues and say, here's a small crash course? Should they prepare a PowerPoint deck and a 30-minute presentation? Should they just say, hey, I'm happy to tell you as much as you want to know? Any of those things show signs of initiative? Or are those annoying? How would you read that if you were the officer that was approached with that kind of a strategy?
I would be thrilled that faculty member and director of forensics was excited enough about their program to take the time to do that. I think what you want to do, you don't want to overwhelm with information, because basically you're dealing with salespeople and we're very ADD people, and we're not so good when it comes to lobbing us a whole bunch of emails. I mean, sometimes it works, but really the personal, like, hey, could we have a phone call, or could you meet me for coffee? I want to tell you about the program. And then just give me some bullet points, but also give me a narrative. I think you're going to gauge it by, you want to tell the story, but think about, you all are great communicators. So think about who your audience is, and the more information, the better, just not an overwhelming amount of information.
Well, sometimes overwhelming is synonymous with debate people, so I appreciate the caution there. Speaking of cautions, how about some of the biggest mistakes that you see program leaders make in the process of looking to be a part of fundraising?
I think a lot of it has to do with what I said before, which is, hi, here's my program, raise my money. Because again, sometimes people in higher education don't like to hear it, but we're in sales. I mean, I consider myself a philanthropic advisor, but at the end of the day, I'm selling something. Now, it's something that people, if they're talking to me, want because they're interested in higher education. But I think the thing to not do is assume that it's the development officer's responsibility. But it's all a total responsibility to get this money for you. But it's also, you know, bug us. We're in airports in normal times. We're in our cars. We're running all around. You know, I had somebody work with me once that said, "Well, it's really hard because I never know where you're going to be. You're not at your desk." I said, "Well, there's no money in my office." So the partnership is really information, relationships. You know, the relationship with the development officer, as well as the relationship with the donor.
So a lot of people are always worried about how much to show the reality of what their program is doing anytime. There's a chance of students giving a controversial speech that a donor might find alienating, or there's a chance that a person is using a style of debate that seems inaccessible to a donor. What is your advice about how much to show and make available versus how much to try to control the narrative by speaking in grander terms about just loving forensics broadly?
Well, I find that controlling the narrative with college students is next to impossible. Um, but I think broad is good in the sense of helping to understand it, because what you all have to realize is you live, eat, and breathe this. It wasn't until I worked with you, Jarrod, that I knew that forensics wasn't something done in a crime lab. Like, I didn't know what that meant. I knew what debate was, and I thought it was fantastic, but I didn't, and all the different styles you've taught me and the things that the students have taught me. I think that it's showing the broader base, but also some of the things that you have done that has been really illuminating is you know, a lot of places have boards and councils and volunteer groups, and when we got you in front of our College Board of Visitors and they got to see a debate, I mean, they kind of knew about it, but they didn't know how it really worked. They were just amazed at these students and how smart they were. And also, the thing about the arguments is sometimes, you know, they know that the arguments are just assigned to them, and they may not, it may not be what they believe, is my understanding. It's just they're making the argument. So I'd put it all out there.
Excellent. Okay, so key vocabulary. Any phrases or terms of art or words that a person should know before they start interacting with their development officer?
The word consider is very strong. Would you consider helping me? Everybody will consider something. Would you, I mean, I will consider going to the gym in the morning at 5 in the morning, but yeah. Would you consider helping me? Would you consider partnering with me? Because that shows it's a two-way street. Would you consider making a gift to this program? Would you consider supporting this program? Great word. Would you, as the donor, partner with us to make this program stronger, to strengthen this program? It's not, so you have to think about things. It's not like, will you give money to this? Will you assist us in strengthening?
So for the programs that don't have the longevity of a big alumni base, and they may think, how would I do fundraising? Our program hasn't been around long enough to have our fiercely loyal students that have gone on to do amazing things. They're just not in a place in their life to write a really big check yet. What would your advice be to someone who's thinking in terms of their alumni base? Is there a way to get beyond your alumni base? And if so, what would your advice be for someone like that?
I think what you need to think about is what you're doing is so remarkable and unusual and such an important part, really, of American history, if you even think about it, that you don't necessarily always have to be going to your alumni of debate. So if you work at an institution that has a large or a long-term alumni base, and you may have only had a forensic program for a short period of time, there are people who didn't necessarily do debate who could be interested in funding it because of how important it is. And I go back to parents. Now, if the institution just doesn't have an alumni base, um, there are, the conversation for another day, but there are philanthropic individuals out there that are just interested in in debate. I mean, you never know. You Google somebody and you Google large gifts to debate or great debaters in America, and you just never know. People might be interested in what you're doing, even though if they're not associated with the institution, but they could be interested in debate.
So it seems like we're still coming back to this theme about generating a narrative, both of what your program does for the institution, how your program benefits society, how your program benefits the students. Is it fair to assume that students will have to be involved at some point in this process? It seems like that's something that people buy into in part because of the relationships they form with students. In your experience, do students play a key role? And
Very
if
key.
so,
Very key. So one of my colleagues who raises money for the arts at Wake Forest definitely involves donors in seeing those performances. So it's like athletics. You go to those games. So with debate, you have to see what those students are doing and experience it. Wake Debate is my favorite Wake Forest team, but and so you really, in order to support the team, you need to see the team perform.
okay, final question as we get close to our 20-minute mark here. If somebody takes this video and says, I want to learn more, what resources, where would you direct them? Is there a seminal textbook? Is there a particular book you would recommend? Are there resources online? Where should someone go next to really dive into it?
There is an organization called CASE, C-A-S-E. It's Council for Advancement and Supportive Education. Go to case.org, and they have a lot of resources on their website. I mean, there's always the Google, but CASE has a lot of resources on their website just about fundraising in general, so that people could get just a little bit more familiar with the vernacular.
And in your experience, a person that's starting from a financial need, are they better off shooting for a relationship that gets that shorter term fundraising source just kind of going in hopes that that grows into that long game with a bigger gift?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You want to start the relationship. I mean, and the people, people who have funded Wake Debate, they kind of put their toe in the water a little bit, and then they saw the outcome that blew them away, and so then they considered doing more. You just have to experience it, what you're supporting.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time, Melissa.
My
We truly
pleasure.
appreciate it today. Thank you.
Absolutely. See ya. Good luck, y'all.
Thank you. All right. Thank you all for indulging the video version of that part of the presentation. Melissa's an amazing person, and she's really been the only reason that Wake Debate had a chance to do any fundraising. So I'm going to give you the 10 things that I learned from working with I'm checking out the chat here from Dilo, who says, one thing that may help is a note from your development officer that would help other campus development officers understand debate. Yeah, that'd be fun. She would happily do that. Yeah, we could definitely make that happen. Good idea, Dilo. So when I showed up at Wake Forest, I had these grand visions of fundraising. I thought, we've been around since 1835. The university started in 1834. We have all these alums. We're going to raise all this money. I got a meeting with the development office in the first year I was here and just completely stalled out. And we stayed stalled out for 3 years. And in those 3 years, every time I thought, well, look at this famous alum we have, or look at these people, certainly they can write a check, I was shut down at every turn. And so I want to make sure it's clear that the people who made this generous gift to Wake Debate were not Wake Debaters, have no connection to the program in the sense of being connected to the debate community as it relates to Wake Forest at all. So we just got lucky because Melissa brought and made this relationship happen. But over the course of the time period that we've been working together, there are 10 things I wish I knew. And there's very little director of debate training that we get in how to do any fundraising. It's just not part of something that we typically teach how to be a director of debate and do. So I'm going to do 10 things. I'm setting a timer for myself. It's going to be under 15 minutes and then Q&A. Number 10, the timeline is long, but worth it for an angel gift. So a major gift or an angel gift is a gift that will change your program. It's not the same thing as the annual fund where we go on social media and say, hey, kick in some money on this day to celebrate Wake Debate or something along those lines. A major gift is a gift that typically changes the outcome or the future of your program in a meaningful way. There's a very famous fundraising quote that says, quote, no matter how broad the base of support, no matter how many contribute to an annual fund, if you are not stimulating truly significant gifts for your organization, then from the perspective of the administration, everything else is window dressing. And I didn't believe that when I showed up at Wake Forest. I thought, even if I got small gifts from a big alumni base, that would show a big support base. And that's not how it works in fundraising. In fundraising, 80% of an organization's income is typically generated from 20% of the alumni base or whoever the donor base is, period, end of story. So major gifts, the big gifts are what we're talking about here. And so the 10th argument, or the 10th lesson I had, is it takes a long time. So Melissa introduced me to the big donor from Wake Debate on May 29th of 2013. We did conversations, emails, coffees, chats. Never once did I talk about making an ask, because that wasn't my role. I literally just built a relationship as Melissa set it forward. The first check to Wake Debate didn't come until 2 years later in May of 2015. And that initial check to today, they've written checks about $1.3 million worth of cash gifts to Wake Forest Debate. But they were producing about $225,000 a year. They decided to make a big endowment of about $5 million, because that would produce about $225,000 a year, the same amount they've been giving. But that gift is started and does not actually get completed until 2026 is where the end point of that fundraising gift agreement is, which means it's 13 years worth of conversation, relationship, and development between when that initial conversation happens and when the major gift happens. And the truth of the matter is, people just don't write big checks the first time they meet you very often, or at least that's not what the literature says happens. Number 9, you have to win a spot on the actual college priority list before development will give you the time of day. So this is what happened to us at Wake Forest. Most universities are in 2 forms of a capital campaign at any given time. They're either in a silent campaign where they're raising money silently, or they're in a public campaign where they have a very specific goal and target. I showed back up at Wake Forest at a time of the start of a public campaign. The problem was Wake Debate wasn't on the public campaign. We were not in the list of priorities for the college. We were not in the list of priorities from the provost office. So when we approached development and said, let's start talking about donors, let's start raising money, that didn't count towards their actual quotas and goals to meet the public campaign. So we were literally running the risk of reaching out to donors and taking money off the table that the development office would have thought was money that could have otherwise contributed to different things on campus. For example, there are 2 endowed professors. There's a room in the library, and the entire law school are named after former Wake debaters. But those are not people that we were given permission to reach out to, talk to, or otherwise prospect, because the university already had a vision for what those people's contributions could be. So going back to the theme over the course of the entire conference, you have to win the spot with the actual role in the university, with the stakeholders. They have to buy into your vision in order to give you that spot. And we did not have that at the start of the process, and that was a serious problem for our fundraising efforts. Number 8, when you do reach out to development, when you reach out to your development office, following Melissa's advice about going through the executive assistant to the actual director of development, you want to offer them 3 things. The first thing you want to offer is to do a 15-minute PowerPoint deck, Prezi, however you want to do it, a 15-minute presentation to the development officers about what your program is. That is the forced timeline to make sure it is digestible enough for those people to turn around and start selling it in the version that they can sell when they sit at a table. At Wake Forest, it's divided regionally, so the Atlanta rep will sit with a person from Atlanta. They'll find out that they were a debater. They'll say, oh, boom, I remember this presentation. Do you know the debate team's doing this? Do you know the debate team is doing that? The second thing you should offer is to show up to any development event and speak, or do a dog and pony show with debate. All of you all have some version of this that you've done for some organization or group on campus. The debate team Wake Forest does this for the Board of Visitors. As Melissa's mentioned, we've done everything from the spouses of the trustees. We've done, you name it. We have an open door policy with development. If you need entertainment, ask the debate team. We will show up. We will debate what topic you want to debate relative to the conversation. We'll bring our own topic. We'll have that conversation, and we'll do that for you. And the third thing that you should offer is that you should be willing to say that you, as the director, are happy to join any development officer on a conversation with an alum of the program. So I've gotten in my car, driven to Atlanta and had dinners. I've been in Raleigh and had dinners. And this comes back to what Paul Hayes said about the finite amount of time we have as directors of debate and forensics. Do you really have time to do all this? In my estimation, this is the ultimate force multiplier. When you start bringing money in, you start to have the ability to hire more assistant coaches. You start to have the ability to do that force multiplier across the university. So I think it's worth it to make those offers. Okay, number 7. Ask the development to assess the potential giving of your alumni base. All of them have the software. The software spits out a pyramid. If they don't know who your debaters are, your alumni are, you have to give it to them. But they take this pyramid of potential giving and match that to what could be your campaign. So I think I may have skipped one to talk about what our campaign is, but I'll do that in a second. So with Wake Debate, when we sat down and said, here's how much money we would need for an endowment for travel, here's how much money we would need to make sure that, you know, everything from the director position, the program, you name it, here's how much money we would need. They spit out 4 potential names. 4 potential names. And guess what? All 4 names were currently being prospected by the university and giving to other things. So when we looked at the Wake Debate alumni, we found a lot of people who were just at stages of their lives where they weren't able to write a major gift check. And the formula of the software knows it. It knows crazy things. Like, for example, that people who achieved 50% of their wealth from entrepreneurship give on average $235,000 a year, compared to people who achieve their wealth from real estate, which give an average of $11,000 per year. Same amount of total wealth. Where it came from is the key distinction. Similarly, people will give in higher and higher amounts until they reach the age 70. Then statistically, when somebody hits the age 70, their donations start to decline and they start thinking about estate gifts rather than cash gifts out of hands. Their software does all this and programs it in and knows everything could happen there. So I think I skipped the idea. Okay, we'll go back. Number 6, be prepared to answer that what do you need with a full buffet of options that balance supporting current programming with a vision of what you could do if someone gave you more money. 1 page, front and back, individual items are specified with no more than 1 paragraph of justification with varying amounts that someone could give to. That pager, that 1 pager on both sides, gets in the hands of the development officers, and they can take that either mentally or they can take it physically with them when they meet with someone that might play a vital role in what they give to your program in the future. Number 5, understand that your role is not to ask for the money. So Dr. Loudon was terrified of doing fundraising because he didn't like the idea of asking alums for money. Well, when I showed up, I had that same fear. How am I going to go to these people who have, you know, been a part of Wake Debate and sit down with them and ask them for money? But that's not what you do. And if you work with the development office, your job is the relationship and the vision. You facilitate relationships with the students. You facilitate a vision for where the program could go. You talk about relationships based on intergenerational connections, but you don't make the ask. The development person makes the ask. And once you know that, it's a very freeing thing to be able to work with and partner with the development office, because your role is not to do that. Now, once gifts start rolling in, your role becomes cultivate that relationship through stewardship and thank yous. Thank you notes, thank you videos, the debaters writing thank you notes, the debaters doing thank you videos, the debaters going to lunch with people, facilitating that relationship then becomes your goal, but you're not the person making the ask. Number 4, cash is great. I thought everything needed to be endowments. When I showed up, I thought, you know, we should go for the endowment every time. But cash is an essential part of giving you seed money to start programs that the donors might then say, that's been going great. I want to make sure it's permanent and there forever. And that's how they then choose to make the endowment take place. So when our donors were giving us a check every year, about $225,000, we would steward those funds. We would not just say, you funded our ability to have debate this year. We gave basically an hour-and-a-half PowerPoint presentation every year, down to the penny, where each and every one of those funds went to, how it expanded Wake Debate in terms of all kinds of variety of programming and ways that we used it, assistant coaches, more tournaments, different types of tournaments, everything. And then that led to the decision that they wanted that to be a permanent feature of their contribution to wake debate with the big endowment. But cash is not something to look down on, especially if you can maneuver the university to give you a continuing account or a gift fund, as they refer to it, so that you don't have to spend it all by the end of the fiscal year. If you can get to a continuing account, then you could save the money and not have to spend it all at once. You can develop some more long-term programming, which is helpful. Number three, endowments create the rock in the cabbage. So going back to James Rowland from Louisiana, who kicked my butt all through my time in Louisiana debate. No one was a better debater than James. The idea here is that endowments create something that makes it very difficult for the university to turn its back on in the future. In part because they get APC, the associated program costs. So at Wake Forest, they take 8% flat rate that'll come off of this $5 million endowment every single time. So for them, if the stipulations of the endowment say things like our endowment says, which I'll talk about in a second, then what that does is it creates this particular thing that the university then supports in the long run, because it creates the long-term structure that most of us think of when we think of endowments. But recognize the same thing that Alicia Cohen said before, which is that just because you have $1 million endowment does not mean you're spending $1 million. You're really spending $45,000 minus an additional 8% that goes to the applied cost, which is why endowments are crucial, but cash on hand is really helpful as well. Number two, participate in the fund agreement process. That's essential. So at some point, the donor, if they decide to write the endowment, are going to ask the development office to run the gift agreement by you as the director. You've got to read this through the lens of what would a hostile administrator do in 50 years? If they read this agreement, is there something ambiguous in there that would let the funds go to something else? So for us, we benefited from the fact that our donors had had a negative experience with a debate endowment at another institution. So they specified in our fund agreement that Wake Forest cannot reduce our budget. They specified that Wake Forest cannot reduce its contribution in terms of faculty positions, graduate assistant positions. They specified that if the debate team was outright suspended, no one else could touch the funds from the endowment until the debate team was reconstituted again. So they had had a negative experience, which led them to a very specific fund agreement. You should protect your program for the long run. And when they invite you into that fund agreement process, think through not just what you need right now, but what the long-term potential is for guaranteeing that your program is secure. And last but not least, my number one piece of advice is that conditionality is in fact good. There's a very important quote when it comes to fundraising that says, quote, "Those who hold great wealth and direct it to support programs invariably want to shape rather than just support the cause." So something that Alicia said that was critical was, oftentimes as debaters, someone will say something to us, but they don't say it with the force of a debate argument, so we're not as likely to listen. The truth is that people who are giving money to your program will give subtle hints about things they might like to see. And it is your task as the director to not only hear that idea, but to pounce on it, praise it, build it, and then do something with it that makes them excited to be a part of the program. When they did a survey of the people who had stopped giving money in major gifts and asked them, why did you stop giving funds? The number one reply was they no longer felt like they had a personal connection with the program. If you stand up and say, we have a great program, give us money to do it better or to protect it, there's a certain type of donor that will do that. But the vast majority of people who write really big checks want to be a part of the program. They want to be a part of the brainstorming sessions. They want to be a part of squad meetings. They want to be a part of the team, not just someone who writes the check. So you have to be open to the possibility that they have some ideas that are not just the status quo, and that you're going to have to test some of those out with your donor to see which ones work for your program. Okay, thank you all for indulging me on that part there. We have about 15 minutes, so I'll shut up now and we can do some Q&A or let some other people toss out some ideas that from their experiences as well.
I do have just 2 points to sort of add to what you said, Jarrod. I think Wayne State debate, for instance, I think really benefit when you talked about the stone and the cabbage result or the effect of an endowment. I think that's really for us. It's really protected that program in so many ways that I always. When I was DOF, I always wished that our endowment was a little bit bigger. We had more cash on hand, but the one benefit that I was always pleased to have was it kept us central within our college as one of the larger sort of gift accounts that existed, and it within our department, when some faculty would sort of call for our budget to be cut, it was similar to yours, that the alumni made it clear that if the department or college cut funding, that they could not access those funds. And so it does create an incredible sense of protection. And then when you mentioned about award agreements, even for smaller, like for us, we have a lot of alumni interested in giving scholarships or small awards. And you also really want to look over those agreements because in my experience, the award officers, meaning having good intentions, will often talk to the donor and tell them to put a bunch of requirements and expectations that from my perspective were infeasible. Like we couldn't give out the award because it had so many stipulations. And so having the conversation with the person interested in giving the award about I know to staying within what you want, here's what we can do and what would be best for the program as well. So that's always something I try to warn folks is really look at the language and think about, do I have a student that could receive said award, or could I use funding in this way that this alumni wants to limit it?
So Paul's asking a question in the chat as well about other tactics you employ to mitigate the perception that debate is a competitor to their efforts. So my experience was that you're basically caught in one of two situations. Either situation one, you're playing the long game with your current students, hoping that over the course of your career, they're going to develop a strong enough financial profile to be able to give to your program. And so the other development officers won't see it as a threat because no one has prospected this group of people and you have established a culture of giving. So they're kind of a protected class. Now, they're not going to stay that way if you don't develop that relationship with them while they're students. And Melissa made mention of the parents, and we haven't done a whole lot of that. We've done some of that, but we haven't done a whole lot of parent-based campaigns before to see if it's possible to get to them. But at the end of the day, the second scenario is the one I think is the most accurate, which is there's a group of people who have not given to the university or the institution before. And so where the magic Venn circle lines up is, where they line up is someone who is a former debater of your program or someone interested in debate who does not have a history of giving to this institution. And then the development officer sees, okay, this is not a person I can just say, do you want to write a check to the library? Then you become the connection that they otherwise wouldn't have. And so that's really where the sweet spot is somebody who has financial giving capability, is giving to other institutions and has the potential to give to debate or to give to your institution, and the prospecting just hasn't been successful so far. You step in and then save the day for that officer. Great suggestion from DCH here about working with the IT department to make sure when someone searches for a debate, your contact information comes up. That's a great one. Some of the other people who are in this Zoom have had a lot of success with their programs. And some of their programs have been very successful without using the model I described here of going through the development office per se. Some of you all have created alumni committees, which is a strategy that I know has been successful at other institutions where there's a couple of alums who are really excited about ensuring the future of the program. So they get together, they develop the campaign, they develop the strategy. And the development office is always happy when those people come around and show the work that they did, but that the initial effort is with the actual creation and constitution of an alumni committee to do the fundraising. The NDT and the AFA actually with Kelly, as you all know, is doing an expansion of the NDT Board of Trustees to create a fundraising committee within that, which I think is going to be essential. That sounds like an amazing idea. I'm so excited they're doing that. What else jumps out to people? If nothing else, then there's no need to hold up a Saturday night when we're hopefully taking some vaccines and enjoying them. So I see here DCA also put, it also helps to be creative with the wish list. That's right. They envision something that might not otherwise be doing. That's really a key part of that. I agree 100%. So Paul says, while we wait on others regarding your current prospects, do you explicitly try to set expectations? Yes. So we do work very explicitly on the culture of giving now at Wake Forest. So at our debate retreat, we actually have a thank you night that we started. It used to be the night where Dr. Loudon would give the history of Wake debate speech. And so we do a little bit of that now without having the opportunity to have Dr. Loudon do that quite at the same way of traveling to the retreat like he used to. So we actually do the very first night of the retreat, a series of handwritten notes from the debaters, thanking everyone, not just the person who's our major donor, but the other people who've contributed any amount as well. That's what we do to create that. And I give the little pitch at the outset that someday we hope that the debaters are writing that note to you. All right. Well, the long day. Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you for making this happen. Thank you to the AFA for giving us a spot.
Well, thank you for doing the interview and for sharing what Wake is doing. I know I found it really helpful when we were initially talking about it, and the presentation provides a lot of great details and suggestions. So thank you very much.